For years I watched her date my roommate, until after the roommate. Chapter 1. The first time Ophelia saw our apartment, she laughed at the crooked molding and said the place had charming haunted doll energy. She was holding my roommate's hand then, Patrick, with his too bright smile and the ability to turn any argument into an anecdote, and I played the part I'd been practicing for a year, the good friend who was not staring at her mouth. Ophelia smelled like bergamot and rain. Her hair was a careless dark curl situation that looked like it had opinions about poetry. She wore a battered denim jacket with a stitched-on peach and a pin that said "Feelings are data," which hit me like a thesis statement. Patrick said she was a graphic designer who hated fonts with names like Papyrus and Fun. I said, "Welcome," and hid my heart behind a dish towel. For a year, I made tea and listened to their stories. I watched Ophelia's hands when she talked, the way her fingers described circles in the air, like she could draw a door and step through it. I laughed at Patrick's wilder tales and bit my tongue when he didn't notice the wince in her shoulders. I learned exactly how many minutes it took her to cross town from her studio, 26 if the F train remembered it was a train. I learned that she slept with one wrist tucked under her cheek on the couch during movie nights, and that if you startled her, she made a soft sound that felt like being trusted. I learned, too, the small disappointments, Patrick forgetting her gallery opening, Ophelia pretending it was fine. The way he said "you're dramatic" when what she was honest. The way she shrank and then laughed about it, as if shrinking were a bit. I told myself it was none of my business. I told myself the crush would fade if I named it correctly: admiration, fascination, a bruised, glittery ache. I told myself that being good meant being quiet. The night it ended began with weather. A storm pinned the city to its knees, thunder rolling between buildings like a bowling ball. Patrick came home from a performance gig wired on adrenaline and other people's attention. Ophelia followed an hour later, soaked to the knees, her eyeliner blurred into a new species of wing. She stood in the doorway and looked at me first, as if checking what the room felt like. My chest did not behave. "Hey, Joe," she said, soft, calling me the nickname only she used. "Hey, Patrick." Patrick swung around, grinning. "Babe, I crushed it. The crowd ate me." "I watched the live," she said, one eyebrow lifting. "You forgot to credit the collaborator in your bit." Again. He waved a hand. "Oh my God, we're doing this? It's a stage name thing. And it's not that deep." Ophelia stepped inside. The storm climbed the fire escape, lightning white lining our crooked molding. "It is to them," she said. "It is to me." It happened fast and in slow motion. Voice raised, apology missed, 1,000 small slides collapsing into one decision. Ophelia said, "I can't do this anymore." Patrick said, "You're overreacting." She looked at him like she was watching the end of a sentence. She looked at me like she could see the whole paragraph. Then she took off the denim jacket and left it hanging on the peg by the door, the peach and the pin and the rain, and walked back into the storm. Patrick cursed, paced, threw his arms around in a choreography he'd used to sell jokes, then went to a friend's to drink. The apartment breathed out when the door shut. The hallway smelled like wet city and the ghost of bergamot. I stood with my forehead against the cool wood for a count of 30, then pulled on my boots. The umbrella by the door had a constellation of rips. I took it anyway. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew where my feet wanted to be. The rain made everything honest. I found Ophelia on the stoop 2 buildings down, denim dark, knees up, hands tucked in sleeves. She looked up at the sound of my boots and smiled like a new kind of weather. "Hey, Joe." "Hey," I said, umbrella useless between us, heart louder than the storm. "Can I sit?" "You always could." I sat. The rain didn't care. My shoulder touched hers, electric and inevitable, and the storm rolled over us like applause. Chapter 2. The rain kept us company, a metronome for my pulse. Ophelia's knees brushed mine, damp denim to damp denim, and the storm had the decency to drown out every voice in my head that said don't. She tipped her face toward me, wet curls plastered to her cheek. "Patrick thinks I'm dramatic," she said. I huffed. "He thinks anyone with a backbone is dramatic." Her laugh was small, but real. "You always notice that." I swallowed hard. "I notice a lot." The silence stretched between us, not awkward, but heavy, like a room you don't want to leave. She studied me, eyes darker than the street lamps allowed. "You were watching," she said softly, not accusing, just naming it. I was. The admission was terrifying and liberating at once. My hands trembled on the useless umbrella. For a long time. Her smile tilted, bittersweet. I wondered. Lightning lit us both, the world etched in silver. For years, my crush had been a secret hobby, like folding origami in the dark. Now, under stormlight, it unfurled into something that didn't look small at all. "You don't have to say anything," I whispered. "I know you just ended things." "I don't want to be." "Joe." My name, the way she said it, was steadier than the thunder. "I don't want to be alone tonight." The world tilted. So I took her hand. Her fingers were cold, rain-slick, but they tightened around mine like she'd been waiting. We sat like that until the storm softened to drizzle. When we finally climbed the stairs back to the apartment, it felt like carrying a secret flame through dark halls. Inside, Patrick's jacket was gone, a silent promise he wouldn't be back tonight. The apartment breathed easier, walls relaxing into quiet. Ophelia dropped her wet jacket by the door, peach patch glistening. She turned to me, eyes unreadable, and asked the simplest question with impossible weight. "Tea?" "Tea," I said, though what I really meant was, yes. "Anything. As long as I'm here with you." Chapter 3. The kettle hissed like it was trying to keep a secret. I leaned against the counter, watching Ophelia rummage in the cabinet for mugs. She chose the chipped ones, the pair with fading constellations, hers Orion, mine Lyra, as if by instinct. "You ever notice Patrick never made tea right?" she said, dropping the bags in. "Always drowned the leaves, forgot the steep time." "Patrick never listened to instructions," I murmured. "Or people." She smirked, setting the mugs down between us. "You always did." Steam curled upward, fogging the window. She blew across the rim, watching me through the vapor. "I used to catch you watching me." My chest clenched. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." She sipped. "You looked at me like I was more than a prop in his story." That felt rare. I stared at my tea, hands tight around the warm ceramic. "You were always more. He just never slowed down enough to see it." Her gaze softened, a weight pressing into me. "And you did?" The truth burned hotter than the tea. "Yes." For a moment, the apartment felt like the eye of the storm, quiet, suspended. The kind of quiet where the world waits for your next move. Ophelia reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. It wasn't a kiss, not yet. It was a test, a question written in skin. I didn't pull away. "Joe," she said, my name caught between warning and wonder. "If we start this, we can't pretend it's just tea." The radiator hissed. My pulse was louder. "I don't want to pretend anymore." Her smile was small, wrecked, relieved. She squeezed my hand, then let go too quickly, retreating into the safety of sipping tea. But the air between us was different now. Cracked open. Waiting. Chapter 4. We migrated to the couch with our mugs, the cushions sagging familiarly under our weight. The storm outside had dwindled to a murmur, a soft percussion on the fire escape. Inside, the silence was thicker, layered with everything unsaid. Ophelia curled into one corner, bare feet tucked beneath her, oversized sweater swallowing her frame. She looked less like the sharp, brilliant woman I'd watched at gallery openings and more like someone secret, soft, almost shy. "Patrick never asked about my work," she said, eyes fixed on the steam rising from her tea. "He came to the shows for the wine, not the art." I laughed, low and bitter. "I noticed." Her gaze slid to mine. You always asked. About the colors I picked. The drafts. Even the failed prints. Because they mattered, I said simply. The room tilted. She bit her lip, that old nervous tell. Sometimes I thought, if things were different. The confession dangled, fragile as glass. I leaned forward. Different how? Her laugh cracked, breaking into something more like a sigh. Different like now. Him gone. You here. No pretending I don't feel the pull every time you walk into a room. My breath caught. The floor seemed to drop, leaving only the couch and the glow of her eyes holding me steady. Ophelia. She set her mug down, hands trembling. Tell me I'm not imagining it. That you didn't spend a year holding your tongue the same way I did. It felt like peeling my chest open. You're not imagining it. She exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and grief, and then we laughed, soft, stunned, almost giddy. The laugh dissolved into quiet, into a look that said finally. We talked until the tea cooled, until the rain stopped. Stories spilled, the first time she noticed me sketching her hands in the margins of my notebook, the way I remembered every exhibit she mentioned in passing. Laughter bled into silence, silence into a gravity that pulled us closer on the couch. When her knee brushed mine, neither of us moved away. The clock ticked toward morning, but time felt irrelevant. The city outside yawned back to life, cabs hissing on wet asphalt. Inside, the apartment belonged to us, the walls holding their breath. Ophelia rested her head against my shoulder, voice barely a whisper. Feels like I've been waiting for this night forever. I closed my eyes, breathing her in. Me too. And we stayed like that, two people who had been circling each other for years, finally finding the same orbit, while the dawn crept gently through the blinds. Chapter 5. The blinds leaked pale light across the room, strips of dawn cutting through the shadows. We hadn't moved in an hour, her head on my shoulder, my arm curved protectively around her, both of us too afraid and too unwilling to break the spell. Ophelia stirred first, lifting her head, blinking blearily into the half-light. Her hair was a wild halo, damp from the storm, curls rebelliously framing her face. She caught me staring and smirked softly. You're going to give me a complex if you keep looking at me like that. I've been looking at you like this for years, I admitted. The words felt dangerous, but they were truer than anything I'd ever spoken. Her smirk faltered, melted into something open, tender, undone. Joe. It was the way she said my name that tipped the world sideways. The air between us changed, denser, electric. She was so close I could count the faint freckles across her nose, see the quick rise and fall of her chest. She hesitated, searching my eyes like she was asking permission without words. I leaned in, just enough to close the question. Her lips brushed mine, featherlight, testing. My heart stuttered, then roared, every nerve sparking to life. The kiss was soft, almost trembling, as if neither of us believed it was real. But when she pulled back, her breath catching, the loss ached. So I chased it. The second kiss was firmer, less question, more answer. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, mine to her waist, and the couch became the center of the universe. The dawn pressed against the blinds, but the sun wasn't nearly as bright as the heat between us. When we finally broke apart, gasping laughter spilled out of us both. God, Ophelia whispered, forehead pressed to mine. All this time, wasted. I smiled, shaky and sure. Not wasted. Just, waiting. Her eyes shone, damp with more than exhaustion. She cupped my cheek, thumb brushing the corner of my mouth. Then I don't want to wait anymore. I kissed her again, slower this time, sealing the vow. Outside, the city roared awake. Inside, on that sagging couch, the world felt brand new. Chapter 6. By the time the city was fully awake, the apartment felt like a place I no longer recognized. Same peeling paint, same crooked molding, but the air itself had changed, warmer, sharper, alive with the echo of her kiss on my lips. Ophelia stretched like a cat on the couch, hair in a wild halo, sweater slipping off one shoulder. She looked at me with a crooked grin that was equal parts exhausted and luminous. "So," she murmured, "do we pretend this didn't happen? Or do we pretend it's been happening forever?" My laugh cracked out, hoarse. "Neither. No more pretending." She held my gaze, serious now. "Good. Because I don't want to go back." The moment was perfect, until the sound of keys scraped at the lock. We both stiffened. Patrick's laugh came muffled through the door, followed by the clatter of him kicking off shoes. He hadn't left for good. He hadn't even bothered with a warning text. Ophelia's hand brushed mine, a fleeting squeeze, then she slid off the couch, putting distance between us just as Patrick stumbled inside. He looked wrecked, red-eyed, rumpled, reeking of cheap liquor and regret. "Morning," he said, voice too loud for the quiet. His gaze flicked between us, suspicious. "Didn't expect, both of you here." Ophelia's tone was steady steel. "Patrick, we need to talk." "Not now. Later." He gave a hollow laugh. "We already talked, remember? You dumped me in the middle of a thunderstorm." His eyes cut to me, sharp. "And you, what, you played therapist?" "Convenient." Heat flared in my chest, but Ophelia stepped between us, her voice calm but edged. Don't you dare make this about her. This ended because of you and me, Patrick." "Not her." He stared at her, then at me, something bitter rising in his face. But for once, he didn't throw a joke over it. He just muttered, "Fine," and shut himself in his room, the door slamming like a punctuation mark. The silence that followed was thick. Ophelia let out a slow breath, leaning against the wall. "Well," she said softly, "so much for a gentle landing." I crossed to her, brushing a curl from her cheek. "He'll figure it out. Eventually." Her eyes softened, but her mouth twisted. "And until then, it's going to be messy." I nodded. "Worth it, though." Her hand slid into mine, fingers intertwining without hesitation. "Yeah. Worth it." We stood there, hands locked, the apartment both battlefield and sanctuary. It wasn't simple. It wasn't easy. But for the first time it was honest. Chapter 7. The morning unfolded like walking across thin ice. Every sound from Patrick's room was a crack, every glance toward that closed door a reminder of the line we'd crossed. But Ophelia didn't leave. She padded barefoot into the kitchen, stole my mug for a sip, and leaned against the counter like she belonged there. "Want me to make breakfast?" she asked, voice too casual. "You can cook?" I teased. Her grin was quick, mischievous. "Depends. Is toast cooking?" I laughed, tension easing. "Then you're a chef." We settled for eggs and half-burnt bread, eating off mismatched plates at the tiny table. It wasn't romantic, not in the candlelight sense. It was messy and ordinary and, somehow, the most intimate thing I'd ever known. Ophelia draped her leg over mine under the table, a quiet claim no one else could see. Patrick's door never opened. The silence behind it was thick, dangerous, but Ophelia met my eyes and shook her head. "Not today." So we carried on. She lingered at the window, sketchbook balanced on her knees, pencil scratching quick lines. I watched her from the couch, my heart flipping at the way her brow furrowed in concentration. "What are you drawing?" I asked. She turned the page toward me. It was rough, just graphite shadows, but I recognized the slope of my jaw, the curl of my hair tucked behind one ear. She shrugged. "Practice." Heat flushed my cheeks. "That's me." "Yeah," she said simply. "You've been in my hands for months." Thought I'd finally put it on paper. Something inside me shifted, a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying sliding off my shoulders. For all the years I thought I was invisible in my own crush, she'd been holding me too, just in a different way. By evening, the air in the apartment was thicker, Patrick's silence pressing at the walls. Ophelia closed her sketchbook and crawled onto the couch beside me. She tucked herself into my side like she'd been doing it for years. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "I'll get my things. Make it official." My breath caught. "You'll stay here?" She kissed the hollow beneath my jaw, feather light. "If you want me to." I didn't hesitate. "I do." The storm was over, but the thunder it left behind still rattled the walls. We ignored it. The world could stay messy, complicated, unfinished. For the first time, what we had wasn't waiting. It was happening. Chapter 8. Patrick finally emerged the next night, eyes bloodshot, shoulders slumped like he'd been carrying his own storm inside. The air in the apartment shifted with him, heavy, electric. Ophelia straightened from where she'd been curled against me on the couch. She didn't flinch, didn't move away. I could feel her decision in the set of her jaw. Patrick's gaze flicked between us, sharp as broken glass. "So it's true." His voice was low, stripped of the usual charm. "I thought maybe it was a rebound. Maybe you were both too drunk on last night's storm to mean it. But you're sitting there like," he broke off, shaking his head. Ophelia's voice was steady, though her fingers dug into my knee under the blanket. "It's not a rebound, Patrick. It's not about you anymore. It's about me choosing what feels right. And this," her hand found mine, threading our fingers together in plain sight, "feels right." He laughed once, hollow. "Feels like betrayal, from where I'm standing." Guilt flared in my chest, but Ophelia cut through it before I could speak. "Don't you dare put this on her. You lost me long before Josie and I happened. You stopped listening. You stopped seeing me. You wanted someone to orbit around your spotlight. I wanted someone to sit beside me in the dark." Patrick's jaw tightened. "And you found that in her?" Ophelia's gaze softened but never wavered. "I did." The silence stretched. My heart hammered, waiting for him to explode, to shout, to kick us both out. Instead, he looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. His anger was still there, but beneath it, something like resignation. "You always listened," he muttered, bitter and grudging. "Guess I should have noticed what that meant." He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, the denim one Ophelia had left behind still hanging there like a ghost between us. He didn't slam the door when he left. That almost hurt worse. The apartment breathed again, uneven and raw. Ophelia exhaled, sinking back against me. "Well. That was less apocalyptic than expected." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pressing my lips to her temple. "You were amazing." She laughed softly, trembling. "I was terrified." "So was I admitted." We sat there, hearts racing in the aftermath, the weight of what just happened settling into something heavier but more real. Patrick's absence was a wound, but not ours to carry anymore. Ophelia tilted her face to mine, eyes tired but shining. "We'll be okay." I kissed her, slow and certain, because for the first time in years, I believed it. Chapter 9. The apartment felt different once Patrick was gone. Not just quieter, emptier, lighter, like some oppressive weight had lifted from the walls. For the first time, I noticed how big the living room really was, how the crooked molding looked less like a flaw and more like character. Ophelia wandered barefoot across the hardwood, surveying the space like it was unfamiliar territory. "It feels different," she said, spinning slowly in the middle of the room. Her curls caught the light from the window, a halo of black fire. "Different good?" I asked from the couch. She stopped, grinning at me. "Different ours." The word knocked the air out of me. "Ours?" She marched to the wall where Patrick's posters still hung, a jumble of garish colors and bad typography. One by one, she pulled them down, rolling her eyes at each. "If we're claiming this place, this has got to go." I laughed, joining her. We tossed the posters into a heap, replaced them with one of her framed prints, a bold swirl of oranges and blues that looked like fire frozen mid-dance. The room shifted again, brighter, warmer, more her. We cleaned. We rearranged. We turned the chaos into something that looked like a beginning. Halfway through, Ophelia tugged my hand and plopped me into the armchair. She straddled the ottoman, sketchbook balanced on her knees, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "What are you doing?" I asked, grinning. "Redecorating," she said, not looking up. "But on paper first." "Don't get too excited, I'm bad at furniture perspective." She turned the sketchbook toward me. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A couch moved under the window, her prints on the wall, a little rug between the chairs. And us, stick figures, holding hands in the middle of it all. I felt my throat tighten. "You're drawing a life here." Her gaze flicked up, serious now. "I want to." The weight of that, after years of hiding my crush, years of watching her orbit someone else, was almost unbearable. I reached out, brushed a curl from her cheek, whispered, "Then let's build it." Her smile was quiet but unstoppable. She leaned in, kissed me, ink smudging our hands where the sketchbook pressed between us. The apartment wasn't Patrick's anymore. It wasn't a waiting room for heartbreak. It was a canvas, and we were painting something new. Chapter 10. The first time we left the apartment together, hand in hand, it felt like stepping into a spotlight we hadn't asked for. The city was its usual chaos. Taxis shouting down avenues, steam rising from subway grates, vendors hawking coffee that tasted like cardboard, but to me, every eye felt turned toward us. Ophelia squeezed my hand, her grin sly. "Relax, Joe. New York doesn't care who you're kissing. Half this block has probably kissed each other already." I laughed, nerves loosening a notch. "I know. It's just different when it's not a secret." "Different good," she corrected. We stopped at her favorite cafe, a tiny place wedged between a laundromat and a tattoo shop. The barista knew her by name, which made me ridiculously jealous until I realized he also spelled her name wrong on the cup. "Ophelia." Ophelia rolled her eyes, leaning into me. "See? Only you spell it right." We claimed a corner table, sipping lattes too fancy for my budget, and for once I didn't worry about Patrick showing up, or anyone judging, or my heart betraying me by staring too long. I stared. She let me. At some point she pulled her sketchbook from her bag and began doodling on a napkin, me, hunched over my coffee with wide eyes, looking like I'd just spotted magic. She slid it across the table with a smirk. "For the scrapbook." I tucked it into my jacket pocket like a relic. On the walk back, the city hummed around us, indifferent and enormous, but every time her shoulder brushed mine, I felt taller. We paused at a crosswalk, and she leaned in, kissed me quick and unapologetic. A woman pushing a stroller smiled at us. No one else blinked. Ophelia's eyes danced when we pulled apart. "See? No lightning bolts. No apocalypse. Just us. Just us." By the time we reached the apartment, my nerves had quieted. The crooked molding still leaned, the radiator still hissed, but the space felt new again, claimed not by ghosts, but by laughter and sketches and the knowledge that outside these walls, we were still us. That night, tangled on the couch with her sketchbook resting across both our laps, she murmured, "Feels like the start of something." I kissed the crown of her head. "It is." And for the first time, I didn't just believe it. I knew it. Epilogue. Ophelia moved her things in slowly, like she was testing gravity. First her sketchbooks. Then her half-dead plant that somehow looked better on our windowsill than it ever had in Patrick's apartment. A week later, her denim jacket with the stitched peach hung next to mine, casual, like it had always belonged there. One night, when I opened the closet, I found her suitcase tucked in beside mine. No announcement. No ceremony. Just a fact. "This isn't temporary," she said when I looked at her. Her voice was steady. "I don't want it to be." I pulled her close, my chest tight with everything I hadn't said for years. "Neither do I." The apartment bore the marks of our claiming now. Patrick's posters gone, replaced with her prints. A new rug with ridiculous tassels she swore were essential. My books lined up with her sketchbooks, our lives spilling over into each other until the boundaries blurred. One evening, we sat on the stoop watching the city melt into twilight. She sketched the skyline absent-mindedly, while I leaned against her shoulder. "You know," she murmured, "I used to catch myself wondering what it would be like. You and me. Back when I couldn't, when it wasn't possible." I smiled into the curve of her sweater. And it's better than I imagined," she said simply, closing her sketchbook and threading her fingers with mine. For a long time I'd thought my crush was a quiet curse, a secret I'd carry until it burned itself out. But sitting there with her, our lives stitched together by ink, tea, and something fiercer than luck, I realized the waiting hadn't been wasted. It had been building. Now it was real. Ours. When she kissed me, slow and certain, the city kept rushing past, but for once, we weren't waiting anymore. We were living. The end. I'm so happy you listened to my little story, and I hope it gave you all the warm, fuzzy feelings. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story.